Hello, welcome back to the RTB13 channel. It's cold. Today we're tackling this, measuring the main bearings of the K24 and introducing nipple cam. The view from my nipples, nice. Yeah, so I don't know how well this nipple cam is going to work out. The GoPros in my garage just don't want to record without putting those bands across. I know it's to do with the lights, but the frequency of the lights just can't be changed. Anyway, let's get on with it. So what do we need for this job? Tools wise, we want a bore gauge. This is a Mitoyo one, and it's imperial, so it's measuring in thousandths of an inch. I've also got a digital micrometer because I'm lazy. I do know how to use a normal micrometer, but I'm just going to use that one for now. Obviously you need your crank. That's been polished, ready. It looks a bit weird at the moment because it's a bit condensated because it's been cold in the garage. And then obviously you need a new set of bearings. So that's what you need, and obviously you need your block. Hopefully you can see that. Okay, as I was saying before I got rudely interrupted, just swapped out this yellow bearing for a green. I'm going to pop the girdle back on, tighten everything up in sequence. Got the safety sliders on, obviously. Oh, damn it. .29 Newton meters. Second half involves your angle gauge. Right, so what we're attempting to do here is we need to put 56 degrees of torque on after the 29 Newton meters. So you use the bracing bar against the inside here and you basically wind this to 0. It'll look off because of the camera angle, but it's bang on. And then we put 56 degrees of torque on it, or 56 degrees of turn. Try to do one smooth motion as the engine hoist fucking moves. Annoying. Okay, there's one done. Good one. Right. That's the main girdle bolts in. 29 Newton meters, and then 56 degrees. And it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That sequence. Keeping up? Good. I've done this about 1,000 times now. Right, okay, so then you drop in the outer girdle bolts. You've got 4 long ones that go opposite number 3 main. You've got another 10 that go around the outside. These are done 22 Newton meters. There's no angle required, just 22 Newton meters straight on. There is a sequence, which is similar to the other one. It's like a crisscross pattern from the middle. It's in the manual, if you download a manual. And number 14. That's one. Cool. See that on nipple cam. I've already got new bearings in there, which I've been checking the sizes using these two tools here. I'm not going to go in depth into how to use these tools. I'm not an expert on it myself. You've tuned in to basically someone that has no idea what they're doing, as you probably already realised. So what are we doing? We're measuring main bearings to work out what bearing shells that we need. So very quickly, the main bearings are here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the other ones are rod bearings. That is your rear main seal end, and that is your timing end, and it's counted from 1 to 5. The bearings themselves come in 2 halves, and you've got one that's got a groove in the middle, an oil galley, and they've also got a tang on the one side, and these ones fit into the block, or they fit into the top half of the engine. And then you've got these smoother ones, hopefully you can see these, and these go into the girdle. The tang on these is in the middle, so you can't mix these up. Pretty straightforward. These ones on the bench here are newish ones that I've been using to measure. You can probably make out the score marks from the gauge. You can't really feel them, but because I'm particularly anal about these sort of things, once I know what colours I want, and I'll talk about the colours in a minute, I'll just put new ones into the engine block. But for now, I just wanted to show you how I've been measuring these. If you've got any comments, questions, or tips on how to do this better, please stick them in the comments below. Another note on the bearings. So all of the Honda OEM bearings are color coded. Now, hopefully you guys are gonna be able to see this, but you'll see a bit of green paint on the end of this, on the edge of this bearing. So that's a green bearing. So what, you might ask? Well, the other part of the puzzle is you need to know what size bearings to start with. Well, so what you need to know is you need to kind of get a rough idea what size bearings you're dealing with. If you haven't had your crank polished and it's your original engine that the crank came out of, you can probably use the same colours again, as long as there's not too much wear on the crank. So I understand. But because this block is not the original block that crank came out of, we need to measure and check some details. So on the end of the crank, come on titty cam, you'll see some numbers here, 34343, and that code relates to what bearings, gosh, what bearings we need. But we need another set of codes which are on the girdle, and you'll find them here, and that one says 34434. So we then go to our manual. It's all in one take though, and you can see we've got the numbers here. So the first bearing would be 3.3, so we go along here, crank is 3, main journal is 3. That bearing needs to be yellow and green. Okay, cool. So that's how I've been working out what bearing colours I need. Excellent. Okay, we can use that for a start to get us in the ballpark, but of course, because this is a different block and this crank has been polished, there's no guarantee that those colour combinations are going to be correct. And of course, depending on the type of engine you're building will depend on what oil clearance or what bearing clearance you'll want to achieve in your motor. So if you're running a turbo motor, you're probably going to want to have a bigger clearance because of the heat. If you're running an NA motor, you can obviously have a slightly tighter one. The manual gives us some guidance on what clearance to use, and I'll show you that now. You would have heard probably the guidance that for every 1 inch. Yeah, for every inch of journal diameter, you use a thou of clearance. So if it was 2 inches, you'd have a 2 thou clearance. Fair enough, but in the manual, the Honda tolerances are actually a fair bit tighter than that. And I've been given some advice on what size clearances to use for my engine and its application. Obviously, if it's a road engine, you can run slightly tighter. If it's a race engine, you can run slightly wider. And then, of course, oil also comes into it. What oil are you going to run? Are you going to run a thin race oil? Are you going to run a thicker road oil? So on and so forth. Anyway, we can see here, we've got some guidance on main bearing. Hopefully you guys can see this. Main bearing to journal oil clearances. And you'll see you've got 2 numbers. You've got journals 1, 2, 4, and 5 are different from journal 3. But the long and short of it is a new bearing in 1, 2, 4, and 5 needs to be between 0.7 and 1.6 thou. That's how you read that. So in case you've never read in thou before, you can use millimeters if you want. If you're more comfortable with that, that's fine. But obviously, this is tens. So it's, how do I explain this? So that would be tens. I don't know the best way to explain this, but basically, if this was 1,000, obviously that'd be 1, 0, 0, 0. And then if you want to go into tenths, you've got another number on the end there. If you ignore that and you just look at the 0.000, that's reading down to 1,000ths of an inch, and that's down to 10,000ths of an inch, right? Going down to the 7. So if we ignore that for now and just say 0.000, if the end 0 was a 1, that would be 1 thou. Okay, makes sense. If the end 0 was a 2, 2 thou, so on and so forth. So when I refer to 0.7 of a thou, what I mean is it's 7/10ths of 1 thou. Hopefully that makes sense. Anyway, my engine builder, the guy I've been speaking to, has recommended I aim for about 1.5 thou, which would look like, that would be a 1 and that would be a 5, which is closer to the largest size, if you like, that the Honda manual is kind of recommending. Then you've got a service limit here. Obviously, once you get to 2 thou in the manual, it's saying that you should kind of replace it or think about looking at doing something with it. And then you've got a bigger clearance on number 3, but again, I'm aiming for a 1.5 thou. So that would be 15 at the end, if you know what I mean. Cool, hopefully that makes sense. They use plastic gauge. I've struggled to use plastic gauge. I've got inconsistent results with it. I'm going to use measuring tools. So that's that. Cool. That is a hell of a lot of waffle. So let's actually do some measuring and I'll show you the process that I've been following. If anyone's a machine builder out there or a machinist and you're laughing now, stop. Just stop. Please tell me how. Okay, so before we get started, we're going to zero our micrometer to make sure it's accurate. I know I said I wasn't going to go in depth on these, and I'm not, but yeah, I'm going to zero this. So it's got a 50mm zero tool, or zero block, if you like. Try and do it so you can see it, hopefully. I'll put this back in millimeters. So just for the sake of zeroing this, I will turn it to millimeters, but I'll switch it back to imperial, or as the Americans call, standard. Because it is the standard, right? So you make sure the anvils are pretty clean. Anvils are the ends of the tool. The measuring surfaces, if you like, the measuring faces. Okay. 0. So you can see that's 0 to 50mm, hopefully. Turn it back into inches. Okay, so I'm not going to demonstrate absolutely every single bearing because that would just take me all day, and I've already done it. So just gonna, for now, go through the process of measuring 1 to show you what I've been doing. And yeah, if anyone wants to let me know if I've been doing it wrong, I'd appreciate it. Right. So this is just a bit of brake clean. Because of the condensation, and you know, if you've got any contaminants on there which could affect your reading, so give that a quick wipe with brake clean. Now, if you're going to have any inaccuracy in your measurement, this is where it's going to come from. It's the feel of the calipers against here. You don't want to crank it down so it's super tight. It just needs to be, you know, just lightly touching. If I wind this out to about 2.16, we'll be in the ballpark. Right. So that's my measurement. Hopefully you can see that it's 2 inches or 2.16485, but we're really looking at the last 4 digits. We're ignoring the end one. So what we do is we take this out of here. That's for something else. I'll show you guys later what that is. So we put our micrometer in the vise. Don't absolutely crank it down. There's no need. For the sake of this, there's a lot of crap in here. For the sake of this demonstration, I should probably cut a lot of this out. I'll have people whinging at me.
It's 15 minutes of video. It's too long, it's pain.
Go watch TikTok then. Right, so what did I write? 2.16485. Right, so we're saying that's bearing number 1. That's the journal size, right? Cool. The next bit, which is the other tricky bit, is we now need to zero our bore gauge. I don't know how well this is going to show. Might have to tilt you up a bit. Oh, it's not really wide enough, is it? Bastidos. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to put this anvil here in between the anvils of the micrometer, and what we're trying to achieve is to get this dial to read 0. Once we've got that, the technique for doing this, or so I've discovered, oh, man, I really want to try and get this. How can I show you this? Bear with me. Oh, I hope you can see this. This is going to be tricky. So basically what we're trying to do is zero the gauge in here. And you'll see as I sweep, as I move this in the anvils, the gauge is moving, and we're trying to find the 0 point. So we're trying to find the point where the needle won't go past 0 anymore. See, it's quite close there, hopefully. It's gone too far. So once you do the up and down, which is kind of like this motion, I'm also kind of slightly twisting it just to make sure I've not missed a low spot, or I'm just off slightly. So hopefully, I'm trying to lean back a bit so I can get this in shot. Well, hopefully you can see I'm a little bit off. in a bit. Right, so I'm pretty confident that you can see here, that's 0. Try and get it back to 0. There. Right, hopefully that makes sense. So you measure your journal with your external micrometer, you lock that off, you then 0 this, and then what that is going to do is whatever number we see on this, when we put it into the block, will be the oil clearance. And we're aiming, if you remember, we're aiming for 1.5. That's what we want. That's 1 thou, or it's 1.5 thou, basically. So we make sure we measure in the right hole. For this one, it's number 1 at the top, and at the moment, if I take this off, should be able to show you. We've got. So at the moment, in bearing number 1's housing, we've got a yellow on the block side, or what I call the top side of the engine, and then this is the girdle bit. You can see the split in the middle here. Although you can't see the colour on that because it's on the other side, I can tell you it's a green. So that's a yellow green. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put the tool into where the bearing is. And we don't want to measure in the oil galley, in the little groove that I showed you earlier. Hopefully you can see it there. We don't want to have our measuring tool in there. We want to measure top to bottom because that is the tightest point. Believe it or not, these aren't perfectly circular, and the tightest point is top to bottom rather than left to right, and that's to allow oil to go around around your crank. What we do is we put this in and we basically rock it back and forward like we did in the micrometer, and we're trying to see what number we get on the gauge. This gauge has been zeroed, as I showed you a minute ago, and the numbers that you can see, the big numbers represent thousandths of an inch, so 1 thou, 2 thou, 3 thou. So we want to be between 1 and 2, ideally at 1.5, and that's what we're aiming for, basically. So I'm going to try and video this. This might be a bit tricky. Right then, hopefully this is going to work. I'm making no promises. Basically, we're going to put this in here. You can see at the moment, as we move the gauge around, as we move the tool around on the bearing, we can see it move. We get about 1.4 there. So that's 1.4 thou, just under 5. So that's it then, really. That's basically what I've been doing to measure the bearings. Obviously you repeat the process for each individual bearing. You have to measure each journal, zero this every single time, and then check what bearing clearance you've got. And then you repeat the process for each of the 5 bearings. All right then, that's the end of the video. If you found it useful, interesting, or you have any comments, leave them down below, and I will see you next time. See you later.